welcome and settle in. Tonight, we drift quietly through the winding canals of Venice, a city of stone bridges, shimmering reflections, and centuries of whispered traditions. In this city, masks are more than decorations, they are instruments of identity, subtle power, and social ritual. Tonight, you will follow the delicate hands of a Venetian mask maker, tracing the slow rhythm of clay, parchment, pigments, and gold leaf. We will explore ordinary workshops, the quiet discipline of apprentices, the politics of guilds, and the stories of everyday Venetians whose lives are shaped, often invisibly, by these simple yet extraordinary objects. There is no rush here, only the gentle unfolding of history, the small but significant details that give life to the past. As you listen, allow yourself to imagine a texture of parchment beneath your fingers, the faint scent of pigments, the shimmer of gold catching soft candlelight, and the quiet murmur of a workshop where time seems to move a little slower. Tonight, we enter the world of Venice through its masks, a world where ordinary materials, ordinary people, and ordinary days reveal extraordinary stories. So, take a deep breath, let the city's canals and workshops wash over you, and join me in this slow, gentle journey into the curious life of a Venetian mask maker. You find yourself in the narrow, winding alleys of Venice, where the air carries the faint scent of the canals, slightly brackish, a mix of salt water and the ever-present aroma of old wood and stone. The year is 1652, and the city, with its labyrinth of waterways and bridges, is already centuries into its reputation as a hub of art, commerce, and subtle intrigue. You walk past a series of small workshops, their open doors revealing the quiet hum of activity inside. Today, you are not merely an observer. You are the newest apprentice in one such workshop, the studio of a Venetian mask maker named Pietro Bellini. The apprenticeship begins, as many did in Venice, with observation. Pietro is a small man, wiry with age, his fingers permanently stained with pigment, glue, and wax. His eyes are sharp, though, and he notices everything. In the early morning light filtering through high windows, he teaches you first about the materials, the fine layers of papier-mâché, prepared with flour paste and water, left to dry in the sun, the delicate slips of parchment that will one day cover the masks, the powdered pigments that have arrived from as far away as the East Indies, each a story in itself of spice-laden ships and merchants navigating the Mediterranean. You learn to handle these materials carefully, almost reverently. The tactile sensation of the papier-mâché, soft yet firm, requires patience. Too much pressure, and the mask will crack. Too little, and it will lack structure. Pietro shows you the difference between applying a smooth layer and one that will hold texture, the gentle rise of a cheekbone, the curve of a forehead, the subtle indentation for an eye socket. Every mask must breathe as if it were alive, even before it is painted or gilded. In these first days, you are entrusted only with preparation and cleaning. You wash the brushes meticulously, prepare the pastes, and cut the sheets of parchment with a sharp blade, learning the precision required to ensure that every edge is straight, every curve exactly as it should be. It is a slow, methodical process, and in it you find a strange kind of rhythm. The repetitive tasks, though seemingly boring, begin to lull your mind into the quiet focus that Pietro values above all. It is the patience of the hands, he explains, that will eventually shape the artistry of the mask. Life in Venice at this time is not as grand as the tourist brochures suggest centuries later. Beyond the lavish palaces and the occasional gilded church facade, the majority of Venetians lead modest lives, and artisans like Pietro's family are firmly in the middle of this spectrum. The workshop itself is modest, a single room with high ceilings, large enough for a work table, a drying rack for hundreds of unfinished masks, and a small hearth where water is warmed for pastes. In one corner, Pietro keeps a collection of completed masks, a silent display of achievement and possibility. Each mask carries a subtle signature of its maker, often a slight asymmetry, a deliberate flourish, or a hint of color that will distinguish it from the work of a rival artisan. You begin to understand that apprenticeship in Venice is as much about socialization as skill. Pietro speaks often of the history of the craft. Masks were not only used in the famous Carnival, but for daily anonymity in a city where social hierarchies were rigid and reputations could be fragile. Some masks were simple, intended to conceal identity during a quick errand or a discreet meeting. Others were ornate, used for political intrigue or grand occasions. Knowing when to use a mask and which type to create is a lesson in itself, subtlety that even a skilled hand cannot fully master without experience. Pietro encourages you to observe the patterns of daily life in Venice, the gondoliers rowing silently along the canals, the merchants haggling at the Rialto, the children playing with rag dolls in narrow courtyards. All of these scenes, he says, influence the shapes, colors, and expressions of the masks you will eventually craft. A mask is not merely an object. It is a reflection of the human condition, an echo of the city itself. By the end of the first week, you have learned to mix a basic set of pigments and to stretch the first layer of papier-mâché over a simple mold. The results are crude, but Pietro nods approvingly, noting that every artisan begins with such imperfect forms. You notice how the workshop smells differently as the day progresses. The morning air is crisp with water and wood, while by mid-afternoon, the scent of drying paste and powdered pigments is stronger, a faintly sweet, yeasty aroma that clings to your sleeves and hair. Evenings are quiet, and the city seems to pause, as if taking a collective breath after the bustle of the day. You walk home along dimly lit streets, the canal reflecting the flickering light of lanterns. You ponder what you have seen, the meticulous attention to detail. And yet, beneath the calm of this daily routine, there is a sense of tension, a question that Pietro has not yet answered. Some masks are for joy, others for secrecy, and some, you suspect, may have darker purposes. How can a simple object of paste and pigment carry such influence in a city as alive and intricate as Venice? You wonder whether you will ever truly understand the stories behind each mask. For now, you return to the workshop the next morning, eager to begin shaping your first mask under Pietro's watchful eye, knowing that the true challenges of this craft are yet to come. And here, at the edge of your first week, you pause, feeling both the weight and the possibility of this apprenticeship. What will it mean to transform a simple mold into a mask capable of concealing, expressing, or influencing human behavior? How many days, months, or years will it take to grasp this subtle art fully? The answer is not yet clear, but the journey has only just begun. As the days turn into weeks, your life in Pietro Bellini's workshop settles into a rhythm that feels both slow and absorbing. Venice moves around you like a living organism. The canals pulse with gondolas and barges. Merchants shout across bridges, and the call of water against stone provides a constant, almost hypnotic soundtrack. In the workshop, the pace is more deliberate. Every brushstroke, every fold of papier-mâché, every layer of pigment is measured against not only Pietro's exacting standards, but also the centuries of tradition that he embodies. By now, you are entrusted with more than preparation. Pietro allows you to handle basic shaping of masks molds that mimic human faces, elongated noses for the Medico della Peste plague mask, simple eye coverings for the Botta. You discover that shaping a mask is far more than pressing and smoothing. The contours must suggest personality without dictating it, leaving room for interpretation. A mask too symmetrical feels rigid, too uneven, and it becomes grotesque. Your first attempts wobble awkwardly, the cheekbones a little too high, the forehead slightly lopsided. Pietro points out these imperfections gently, teaching you that every flaw has a story, and that, with experience, you will learn to balance them so that a mask appears naturally alive outside the workshop. Venice teaches you lessons that no master can. You observe masked nobles gliding across the Piazza San Marco during quiet mornings, their expressions hidden yet somehow readable in posture and gesture. You notice the vendors selling bright pigments, powdered shells, and tiny brushes. You watch as a gondolier adjusts the oar of his gondola, balancing precariously against the movement of the water, a skill almost as delicate as your own in manipulating papier-mâché. Every interaction, every object, every shadow contributes to your understanding of what a mask must embody, the subtlety of life itself, captured in a fragile, decorative object. In these weeks, Pietro begins to share more of the workshop's deeper secrets. He demonstrates the importance of texture in a mask, explaining how a mask that appears smooth in one light may reveal hidden ridges or indentations in another. He teaches you to burnish gilding carefully, to allow light to catch gold leaf in ways that seem accidental but are meticulously planned. The shimmer of these details is mesmerizing in the dim light of the studio. And you realize that a well-made mask does not simply conceal it, communicates that at times the work is tedious, yet Pietro encourages reflection. He tells stories of past commissions, a mask created for a merchant visiting from Genoa, designed to impress without revealing social rank, a mask for a young noblewoman attending her first masquerade, intended to convey charm and subtle authority. A mask that inadvertently sparked a minor political scandal when its expression was misread during a council meeting. These examples impress upon you the profound responsibility of the mask maker. Though the craft may seem mundane, folding paper, mixing pigments, brushing glue, each creation carries real-world consequences, influencing perception, interactions, and sometimes even fate. You also start learning the vocabulary of the craft, words that are as specialized as the tools themselves. Terms like gesso for the plaster-like base, lacca for the varnish that seals pigments, and spiralatura for a particular layering technique become part of your daily speech. These words, seemingly dull when first memorized, incapable of meeting a client's expectations. Pietro stresses that mastery is not only skill but also understanding this language and the traditions it preserves. The social aspects of apprenticeship begin to emerge more clearly as well. You meet other young apprentices in neighboring workshops, each learning slightly different techniques, each vying subtly for recognition. Some are skilled in gilding, others in intricate carving or painting delicate floral patterns. Pietro encourages you to observe, to note variations, but not to envy or imitate blindly. Individual style, he explains, develops slowly, often in ways imperceptible until years have passed. You realize that Venice is both a city of collaboration and quiet rivalry, and that your growth as a mask maker depends on patience, observation, and careful adaptation during this time. A significant event occurs that illustrates the precarious balance of your craft. A shipment of fine pigments arrives from beyond the Adriatic, but one jar vermilion, the color of powdered cinnabar, has cracked during transit. Pietro shows you how to carefully salvage it, sifting out impurities and adjusting the mixture so that it can still be used. It is painstaking work, and it teaches you that the success of a mask often hinges on attention to small details that might otherwise be overlooked. One misstep, one poorly applied layer, and the mask could be ruined, or worse, fail to convey the intended impression. Evenings are spent walking the quieter streets of Venice, reflecting on the day's work and the subtleties you have observed. You notice the way light shifts on canal surfaces, how shadows move across stone buildings, how the sound of a distant bell changes the perception of time. Pietro encourages this reflective practice, suggesting that a mask maker must not only be technically skilled, but also deeply attuned to the world around them. A mask, after all, interacts with its environment, with light, movement, and human perception. It is an object suspended between reality and interpretation. One morning, Pietro assigns you a small independent project, a simple volto mask, the classic full-face covering, often worn for mundane errands, when identity must remain hidden. It is a modest assignment, but one that requires everything you have learned so far. As you prepare the mold, stretch the papier-mâché, and begin smoothing the surface, you realize the full scope of your growth. Your hands, once awkward and unsure, move with greater confidence. You mix pigments to achieve the correct muted tone, considering how it will reflect the soft Venetian light. You experiment with the subtle curve of the lips and the spacing of the eyes. Yet, as you step back to inspect your work, a sense of unease settles over you. Even in this simple project, there are choices that cannot be undone: the shape of the nose, the arch of the brow, the tilt of the head. Every decision carries weight, no matter how seemingly trivial. You wonder whether the masks you have crafted so far truly capture the intentions of the city, its inhabitants, and the complex interplay of visibility and secrecy that defines Venetian life. The workshop remains silent but full of latent energy, a space where the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. You sense, more acutely than ever, that mastery is not a matter of completing a project or perfecting a technique. It is an ongoing dialogue with history, society, and your own perception. Every mask is a conversation, every stroke a reflection of centuries of tradition, yet simultaneously a product of the moment in which it is created. As the day draws to a close, you leave the workshop with your first Volto mask carefully balanced in your hands, feeling the tension between accomplishment and uncertainty. You understand, perhaps for the first time, that the art of mask making is inseparable from the life of Venice itself, a city of canals and shadows, of hidden messages and subtle performances. Each mask you create is both a part of this world and a window into it, a fragile vessel carrying intention, identity, and, sometimes, consequence. And yet, as you walk home, you cannot help but think, this is only the beginning. If a simple mask can convey so much, what might happen when the occasion calls for extravagance, for deception, or for a mask that must navigate the treacherous waters of politics and social hierarchy? How will you, a mere apprentice, rise to meet the challenges that the city and its demands will place before you? The answer remains uncertain, and that uncertainty, heavy with possibility, will guide your next steps as you continue to grow under Pietro's watchful eye. Weeks turn into months, and the rhythm of your apprenticeship solidifies. The workshop, once a place of tentative observation, now feels like a second home. The one-staunting tools brushes of varying sizes, molds, gilding knives, and spatulas become extensions of your hands. Each movement is deliberate, informed by hundreds of small, practiced repetitions, yet still mindful of the subtle fluidity that brings life to a mask. The Volto mask you were assigned weeks earlier becomes the centerpiece of your learning, a kind of culmination of your growing skills. Pietro inspects it in the soft, fading light of the workshop, his fingers lightly brushing the contours. He nods, a gesture of approval that carries quiet significance. Not perfection, he explains, but a balance of intention, craft, and subtlety, qualities that cannot be hurried or forced. You feel a mixture of pride and humility, knowing that even this modest mask reflects months of careful observation, painstaking work, and attentiveness to the life of the city itself. Venice itself seems to participate in this ritual of creation. The canals shimmer in the afternoon sun, reflecting patterns that mimic the gentle curves and indentations of your mask. The sounds of gondoliers, merchants, and children playing reach your ears in a softened symphony. You notice the smallest details, the way pigeons gather on a bridge at dusk, the faint smell of salt water mixed with baked bread from nearby ovens, the way shadows stretch across the Rialto in late afternoon. These ordinary observations, once dismissed as mundane, now inform the very shapes and textures of your masks. Each is imbued with the quiet poetry of everyday Venetian life. Pietro begins to share lessons beyond technique, offering insight into the broader social and political significance of masks. He tells you about masked gatherings where merchants negotiate in secrecy, where nobles test alliances, and where artists perform subtle social commentary. A mask, he emphasizes, is more than an object. It is a social instrument capable of concealing, revealing, or influencing the behavior of those who encounter it. You realize that your craft, while physically simple, intersects with the invisible currents of power, identity, and perception in ways that are subtle yet profound. In one memorable instance, a mask you created, a small, unassuming Volta finds its way into the hands of a young Venetian clerk attending a minor council meeting. Pietro recounts the story later. The mask, though modest in design, softens the clerk's appearance, lending him an air of quiet authority and discretion. It allows him to navigate the meeting without the intimidation or bias that an unmasked appearance might provoke. You are struck by the power contained within such a small, seemingly trivial object-to-realization, both humbling and exhilarating. The workshop continues to demand patience, attention, and quiet observation. You experiment with more sophisticated designs, layering gesso pigment and gold leaf in ways that mimic the subtle play of light across a human face. You learn to vary textures, to anticipate the way shadows will fall, to imagine how a mask will move with its wearer. Each project becomes a dialogue with both the past and the present, a negotiation between tradition and the evolving life of Venice. Occasionally, you are permitted to assist in the preparation for Carnival, the city's most extravagant festival. The preparation is methodical yet chaotic in its own gentle way. Hundreds of masks must be finished, each inspected for imperfections, each painted or gilded to meet the exacting standards of both artisans and clients. You move among the finished masks, noticing the differences in shape, color, and expression. Some are delicate and serene, designed for quiet anonymity. Others are flamboyant, intended for bold display. The diversity is a reflection not only of your skill, but also of the diverse lives and intentions of those who will wear them. Through all this, you come to understand the apprenticeship in a broader sense. It is not merely about technical skill, but about immersion in the subtle rhythms of Venice's canals, markets, festivals, and social hierarchies. Every detail, no matter how trivial it seems, informs the creation of a mask capable of navigating this intricate world. You begin to notice the invisible lessons: patience, attentiveness, humility, and the quiet recognition that even ordinary objects can carry extraordinary influence. One evening, as the sun sets behind the domes of the city, Pietro presents you with a new challenge, a commission for a prominent family attending Carnival. The mask must convey elegance and discretion, neither too plain nor overly elaborate. You realize this is your first real test, a culmination of the months of careful learning and observation. The pressure is palpable, yet you feel prepared in a way that would have seemed impossible when you first entered the workshop. As you work, you reflect on the journey so far, from the timid days of cleaning brushes and stretching paper to the careful shaping of contours and layering of pigments. Every moment has contributed to a growing sense of understanding. Venice itself has taught you lessons that no manual could capture: the interplay of light and shadow, the subtle dynamics of social interaction, the quiet poetry of everyday life. The masks you create are small artifacts, yet they are deeply intertwined with the human experience, capable of influencing perception, social interactions, and even historical outcomes in ways invisible to the casual observer. The final mask, once complete, carries a quiet satisfaction. It embodies your skill, patience, and attentiveness. Yet it is also a reminder that mastery is never final. Each mask is both a culmination and a beginning, a tangible reflection of a transient moment in time, created for a world that continues to move and shift around it. You present it to Pietro, who examines it with the discerning eyes of a master. A nod, a faint smile, a gentle clapping of his hands, these are the only words needed. You understand that you have reached a milestone, yet the journey continues, and so the first chapter of your apprenticeship concludes with both accomplishment and anticipation. You have learned the tactile and technical skills of mask making, absorbed the subtle rhythms of Venetian life, and glimpsed the broader social and cultural significance of your craft. Yet, the city still holds mysteries, and every mask you create will continue to teach you something new about form, color, light, shadow, and the human desire to conceal and reveal. As you leave the workshop that evening, the canal waters shimmering like molten gold in the last light, you wonder, how many masks will you create in your lifetime? How many faces will you touch, influence, or conceal through your work? And, perhaps most intriguingly, what will you learn about yourself in the process? The answer is uncertain, and perhaps it need not be fully known. For now, the journey of the Venetian mask maker continues, one delicate, deliberate creation at a time. Morning in Venice arrives gently, carried on the mist that hovers above the canals. The city is quieter than usual, though the hum of life can already be detected in faint sounds. A gondolier adjusting his oar, a baker removing trays of bread from a small brick oven, a merchant placing fresh fruits and vegetables on the Rialto stalls. You step through the worn wooden doorway of Pietro Bellini's workshop and are immediately greeted by the familiar scents of the studio, the earthy aroma of damp papier-mâché, faint notes of drying glue, and a subtle trace of powdered pigments. The workshop itself is modest, a single room with high ceilings, walls lined with shelves carrying masks in various stages of completion. Each mask seems to exist in its own small world. Some are blank and waiting, their surfaces pale and fragile. Others are painted, gilded, or partially decorated, reflecting the painstaking labor that goes into each layer of creation. The workbench, long and sturdy, bears the faint scars of years of careful use. Molds, brushes, small containers of pigments, and knives are arranged with quiet order, a system known only to those who work there. Your day begins with preparation, a task that might appear monotonous but is essential to the craft. Water is warmed in a small hearth, then mixed with flour to create a paste that will bind layers of papier-mâché. Sheets of paper are cut to precise dimensions, each piece selected to ensure flexibility, strength, and smoothness. Brushes are cleaned, dried, and organized according to size and bristle type, and the molds themselves are inspected for chips, cracks, or imperfections. Every detail matters, and any lapse in attention can compromise the final mask. Pietro enters the room shortly after you begin, his presence both reassuring and quietly commanding. He moves with deliberate grace, inspecting your preparations, occasionally adjusting a brush, a container, or a sheet of paper. He offers guidance, but not excess instruction. The workshop operates on the principle that much is learned through careful observation and repeated action. In this environment, patience is not just a virtue, it is a necessity. Once preparation is complete, the day shifts into the rhythm of creation. Papier-mâché is stretched over molds, pressed and smoothed, each layer applied with precise timing to avoid cracks or bubbles. You learn to sense when the material is ready, its texture subtly changing as it absorbs moisture and begins to dry. The repetitive motions, spreading, smoothing, brushing, and weighting have a meditative quality, drawing your focus inward even as you remain acutely aware of the work around you. Alongside these tasks, painting begins. Pigments are carefully mixed, often with additional substances to adjust hue, opacity, or gloss. The act of painting is deliberate. Strokes must be smooth and even, yet they must also capture subtle nuances of shadow and form. Pietro demonstrates how the slightest variation in pressure or angle can alter the perception of a cheek, a brow, or a chin. You begin to understand that even minor adjustments can change the character of a mask, imbuing it with personality, emotion, or subtle authority. As the day progresses, the workshop hums with quiet energy. The occasional clink of tools, the soft scraping of molds, and the whisper of drying paper punctuate the otherwise calm environment. There is no need for raised voices. Communication occurs through shared rhythm and mutual understanding. Each apprentice learns to read the workshop's tempo, adjusting movements and timing to maintain a seamless workflow. It is a kind of choreography, a coordinated effort where silence often conveys more than words. Throughout the day, you notice the subtleties that distinguish one mask from another. A bottom mask, for example, demands precision in its angular lines and the pronounced projection of its nose and chin. A Moretta mask, simple in shape but delicate in its execution, must be symmetrical to maintain its understated elegance. Even seemingly minor differences, the curvature of an eyelid, the slope of a cheek can, affects the way a mask communicates its purpose or the impression it leaves on its wearer. Each creation is a reflection of both the artisan's skill and the intentions of those who will wear it. The social dimension of the workshop is ever present. Apprentices exchange quiet observations about techniques, compare subtle variations in pigment or brushwork, and occasionally offer small suggestions or questions. Pietro encourages discussion in moderation, believing that excessive chatter distracts from focus. Yet he recognizes the importance of shared learning. Over time, you begin to see the workshop as a small microcosm of Venetian society, a balance of hierarchy, collaboration, and quiet competition. Work transitions into preparation for finishing. Masks that have dried overnight are lightly sanded to remove imperfections, then layered with a base coat of paint. Drying areas are carefully monitored. Masks are turned or shifted to ensure even exposure to sunlight and air. The meticulousness of this process reinforces the lesson that patience, precision, and attentiveness define the craft. Even a minor lapsan, overlooked bubble in the paste, a misapplied stroke of pigment can diminish the quality of the finished product. Intermittently, Pietro pauses to share anecdotes or historical context, enriching the work with stories that connect masks to Venetian life. He recounts minor scandals where masks concealed intentions, small acts of kindness where masks allowed privacy, and instances where masks facilitated quiet diplomacy. You begin to realize that each mask is not merely an object, but a participant in the life of the city, capable of influencing events, relationships, and perceptions in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. As evening approaches, the pace slows. Brushes are cleaned once more, molds are returned to their shelves, and remaining masks are carefully arranged to continue drying. You reflect on the day's labor, noting the invisible threads that connect preparation, creation, and completion. Every step contributes to the final product, and each product, though seemingly simple, embodies a synthesis of history, culture, and human observation. Walking home along the canals, you consider the significance of this daily rhythm. Life in the workshop, though repetitive, is imbued with purpose and subtle artistry. Each day is an exercise in patience, observation, and attentiveness, and each mask you create represents both a personal achievement and a contribution to the ongoing life of Venice. The ordinary actions of stretching paper, brushing pigment, or adjusting a mold are quietly extraordinary in their impact, forming the foundation of a craft that will persist through centuries. And as the night settles over the city, lanterns reflecting on the water in gentle patterns, you cannot help but wonder how many of these masks, carefully created day after day, will find themselves in the hands of someone who changes the course of a small event, a personal interaction, or even history itself. In the quiet, repetitive work of the workshop, you sense the possibility that something as simple as clay and paint can influence the world in ways invisible to the casual observer. The question lingers, unresolved, as you prepare to return the next morning. How will your continued practice, your growing skill, and your attention to detail shape not only the masks you create, but also the subtle, intricate social world of Venice itself? By now, your mornings begin before sunrise. Venice greets you with a pale, misty light filtering through narrow alleyways, and the soft sound of water lapping against wooden pilings seems to mark the start of your day. Entering Pietro Bellini's workshop, you are immediately enveloped in its familiar atmosphere, the subtle scent of dried paste, the faint metallic temps, and the muted warmth of the hearth where water for pastes is gently heated. Every detail, once unnoticed, now carries significance, signaling readiness, rhythm, and expectation. The day's first task is often stretching new layers of papier-mâché over molds. Your hands move with greater confidence than when you first arrived, pressing and smoothing with an awareness of tension, moisture, and air circulation. You feel the subtle changes in the texture, a section too thick, too thin, or uneven, each requiring careful adjustment. Pietro's eyes follow your movements, occasionally correcting a curve or suggesting a lighter touch, but mostly allowing you to discover the balance between technique and intuition. In these moments, the act of making becomes almost meditative, a dialogue between your hands and the materials themselves. Mid-morning brings painting and preliminary decoration. Today, you are assigned a pair of Moretta masks, delicate ovals meant to fit a wearer's face seamlessly, emphasizing subtlety over extravagance. The pigments must be mixed carefully, sometimes layering colors to achieve the desired muted tones. Pietro demonstrates a technique of gentle stippling to add texture to the cheeks and forehead, a method that catches light differently throughout the day. Watching him, you realize that mastery is not merely about precision. It is about sensitivity to imperceptible variations in surface, shadow, and light. The workshop is not a quiet place in the sense of emptiness. It hums with coordinated activity. Other apprentices move through their own tasks, preparing gesso, smoothing drying masks, or mixing pigment siege, aware of the others, yet operating independently. There is a subtle rhythm to the room. A brush dips, a spatula scrapes, a soft clink of a mold returned to its shelf. Conversation is sparse, often limited to questions of technique or observations about materials. Yet it carries a gentle undercurrent of camaraderie. Through shared labor, apprentices develop a tacit understanding of timing, balance, and the collective pace of creation. Around midday, clients or intermediaries sometimes arrive to view finished masks, though you are only a junior apprentice and typically observe. You notice how Pietro handles these interactions with measured politeness. He presents masks on a small wooden tray, explaining their subtle distinctions, intended use, and special qualities without revealing his own biases or preference. Customers, whether merchants, nobles, or visiting dignitaries, respond differently. Some are quietly impressed, others overly critical, yet Pietro's composure never falters. Through observation, you learn that mask making is not only a technical endeavor, but also a practice in social navigation, communication, and diplomacy. An important lesson emerges as you assist in finishing a particularly ornate botta mask. Its sharp angles, pronounced nose, and carefully balanced proportions require multiple adjustments. One misalignment of the cheek or eyelid could undermine the intended effect. Pietro encourages you to step back frequently, to observe the mask from various angles and lighting conditions. He stresses that what appears correct in one light may falter in another, emphasizing the mask's role not merely as a static object, but as an active participant in perception. You begin to see the subtle artistry in balance, proportion, and the interplay between material and human psychology. The afternoon is dedicated to drying and preparation for the next day's work. Masks are positioned carefully on racks, ensuring even exposure to sunlight and air. You check each mask for imperfections, sanding minor roughness or correcting uneven pigment application. Even at this stage, the process requires patience and precision. A neglected detail could compromise the final product. The workshop operates like a small ecosystem where every object and action affects the others. A single misstep, however minor, can ripple across the workflow between tasks. Pietro shares anecdotes about the historical evolution of masks in Venetian society. He describes their role in Carnival, in private gatherings, and in political maneuvering. He recounts stories of masked council meetings, where identity concealed influence, of merchants using masks to negotiate without bias, and of artists embedding subtle commentary in decorative flourishes. Each story illustrates the intersection of craft, society, and human behavior. You begin to recognize that your work, though ostensibly mundane, contributes to this ongoing social narrative, giving shape and nuance to interactions that might otherwise go unnoticed. As you gain proficiency, Pietro allows you to attempt subtle embellishments under his supervision, a delicate gold trim along the edge of a moretta, a carefully shaded contour to mimic the softness of skin, or the faint suggestion of an expression on a neutral mask. Each small experiment teaches you the importance of restraint, overzealous decoration can overwhelm a mask's subtlety, while too little leaves it lifeless. The challenge lies in finding equilibrium, creating a mask that is neither overtly expressive nor inert, but capable of quietly conveying intention and mood. Towards evening, the pace of the workshop slows. Apprentices clean tools, arrange materials for the next day, and inspect drying masks. You reflect on the day's accomplishments. Layers of papier-mâché formed and dried, pigments blended and applied, subtle adjustments made in texture and proportion. The repetitive, measured work has yielded small triumphs, each reinforcing your understanding of the craft and your place within it. Walking home along the quiet canals, you sense the persistent connection between your work and the life of Venice. Every mask you create interacts with the city's rhythms, the movements of its inhabitants, and the social expectations of its residents. Ordinary actions, pressing paper, brushing pigment, sanding a surface, are quietly extraordinary in their potential to influence perception, mood, and interaction. You realize that the true value of the workshop lies not only in the finished masks, but in the disciplined attentiveness cultivated through the daily rituals of labor. As night falls and lanterns cast reflections on the water, you consider the larger implications of your work. Masks may conceal or reveal identity, facilitate discreet interaction, or subtly influence perception. Yet they also embody centuries of tradition, technique, and careful observation. Each day in the workshop is a step toward mastery, a continuous dialogue between the artisan, the city, and the intricate web of social life. And as you prepare for another day, the question arises again: if such quiet, repetitive labor can shape perception and influence society in small ways, how much more might the subtlety of your craft affect events that ripple through Venice's streets and canals, unseen but profoundly felt? The day begins, as always, with soft light spilling across the canals and the city gradually stirring. Venice is alive with small, unnoticed motions. A gondolier adjusting his oar, pigeons fluttering from the roof of the Doge's palace, merchants arranging their wares along the Rialto. You enter Pietro Bellini's workshop with a sense of familiarity, a rhythm now ingrained into your muscles and mind. Every surface, every tool, every scent has become part of your consciousness, guiding your actions without conscious thought. Today is different, though in subtle ways. A local noble family has commissioned a series of masks for an upcoming private masquerade, a modest but meaningful assignment in your growing apprenticeship. Pietro allows you to participate more fully, letting you handle delicate shaping, careful smoothing of papier-mâché, and layering pigment under his supervision. The workshop feels simultaneously quieter and more attentive, as if every object, surface, and sound acknowledges the weight of the task. You begin by inspecting the molds, choosing the ones that will best suit the family's preferences. These are not extravagant masks, but require balance, proportion, and subtle elegance. Even in what might seem ordinary work, there is immense attention to detail. You check for imperfections in the molds, test the tension of the papier-mâché, and ensure that every layer adheres smoothly. Pietro's guidance is gentle but precise, his corrections nuanced, reinforcing lessons you have absorbed over weeks of careful labor. As the papier-mâché sets, You turn your attention to pigment preparation. You mix muted ochres, soft whites, and hints of crimson to achieve subtle variations in tone. The act of mixing is slow and meditative, requiring awareness of texture, light, and eventual drying. You realize that even the most ordinary colors carry nuance. Slight differences in ratio or pigment source can affect how the mask reads under natural light, impacting the impression it conveys to the wearer and observers alike. By mid-morning, painting begins. You carefully follow Pietro's instruction, applying thin layers of pigment, observing how light interacts with each surface. A soft touch produces shadows in the hollow of a cheek or around the eye socket, lending a sense of vitality to what was previously inert. Pietro shows you how to apply gold leaf sparingly, using its reflection to catch light without overwhelming subtlety. Each mask, though seemingly simple, embodies layers of skill, patience, and observation. Throughout the day, the workshop hums with coordinated, quiet energy. Other apprentices move in measured rhythm, stretching, painting, or sanding. The occasional clink of tools punctuates the atmosphere, yet the room remains calm and deliberate. Conversations are sparse, yet meaningful. Tips shared, observations noted, or gentle reminders offered. The social structure of the workshop is subtle. Hierarchy exists, but so does mutual respect and shared responsibility. You recognize that mastery is not solely individual. It thrives within this collaborative environment. By afternoon, masks are ready for inspection. Pietro carefully examines each one, assessing not just technical execution, but the balance, proportion, and subtle character each conveys. Your contributions, though still developing, reflect noticeable growth. The careful layering, subtle shading, and nuanced contours demonstrate attentiveness and emerging skill. The masks are neither grandiose nor ostentatious. They are functional, elegant, and quietly expressive. In their restraint, they convey both beauty and utility, embodying the philosophy of Venetian mask-making itself. Pietro shares stories as you work. Instances where masks facilitated clandestine meetings, where identity concealed intention, or where a single decorative flourish subtly altered perception. These narratives reinforce your understanding that masks are more than mere objects. They are instruments of social interaction, capable of influencing human behavior in ways often invisible to those involved. You sense, gradually, that your labor, though seemingly mundane, participates in this intricate social ecosystem. As evening approaches, the workshop transitions to closure. Brushes are cleaned, pigments sealed, and masks arranged on racks to continue drying. The day's work, though repetitive, leaves a palpable sense of accomplishment. The masks, once fragile sheets of paper, are transformed into objects capable of concealing, revealing, and shaping perception. They reflect the skill, patience, and attentiveness that define your growing craft. Walking home along the canals, you notice the familiar interplay of light and shadow on the water. Lanterns shimmer on the surface, creating patterns that echo the contours of the masks you've spent the day shaping. You reflect on the quiet significance of your labor. Every brushstroke, every layer, every delicate curve contributes to a social and cultural tapestry that stretches beyond the walls of the workshop. The seemingly mundane work of a mask maker holds consequences that ripple outward in subtle, often unseen ways. you ponder the path ahead. Venice is a city of masks, shadows, and nuanced interactions. Every mask you craft, no matter how simple, participates in this delicate web, influencing identity, perception, and social exchange. The daily rhythms of the workshop, stretching paper, mixing pigments, smoothing surfaces, may appear repetitive. Yet they cultivate a discipline and sensitivity essential to understanding both the craft and the city itself. And in this quiet reflection, a thought lingers: if a mask carefully crafted with patience and subtlety can influence a single interaction, what might years of dedicated practice accomplish? How will the discipline, observation, and attentiveness developed in these ordinary days shape your ability to navigate not only the world of masks, but the intricate social life of Venice itself? The answer is uncertain, yet the possibilities are endless. Each day in the workshop brings growth, subtle mastery, and an expanding understanding of the quiet power contained within simple, carefully made objects. And so, the rhythm of clay and paint continues, guiding both your hands and your mind toward deeper insight, skill, and appreciation for the understated artistry that defines Venetian mask-making. As winter begins to wane, Venice slowly awakens to the anticipation of Carnival, a season both long anticipated and meticulously prepared for. The city transforms in subtle but perceptible ways. Shutters are cleaned and polished, streets are swept, and shopkeepers arrange their goods in anticipation of visitors, locals, and merchants who will pass through during the festival. In Pietro Bellini's workshop, the change is more pronounced. The shelves, usually calm and orderly, are now stacked with molds, pigments, gilding supplies, and partially completed masks, evidence of weeks, sometimes months of preparation. Carnival is not merely a spectacle, it is an institution. For Venetians, it is a period where social boundaries blur, identities shift, and ordinary interactions are overlaid with an additional layer of anonymity and pageantry. Masks are central to this phenomenon, serving both functional and symbolic roles. They allow the wearer to conceal their social status, gender, or intentions, while simultaneously participating in a highly visible tradition of communal celebration. Each mask carries cultural weight, embodying centuries of custom, artistry, and, often, subtle regulation. Pietro begins by reviewing the orders for the upcoming season. There are dozens of masks to prepare, ranging from modest volto designs for local families to elaborate botta masks commissioned by prominent nobles. Each request carries unique specifications, particular shapes, colors, gilding styles, or delicate embellishments such as filigree, feathers, or intricate lace. Attention to detail is paramount. Even a minor deviation could affect the mask's functionality or social acceptability. You spend the morning sorting molds, inspecting each for imperfections, and selecting the most appropriate ones for the orders. The workshop hums with quiet urgency, though not in a frantic sense. Each apprentice, including yourself, moves deliberately, aware that precision and patience are more valuable than haste. The preparation of materials, mixing pastes, and organizing pigments is an essential prelude to creation, laying the groundwork for the delicate work to come. Historically, masks were subject to strict regulations. The Venetian government, wary of their potential for facilitating clandestine behavior, placed limits on when and how masks could be worn. Certain designs were restricted to specific social classes, while others were prohibited during times of public unrest. Pietro recounts these regulations as he works, explaining how mask makers not only created art but also navigated legal and social frameworks. Knowledge of these rules was part of the craft itself, and masks were designed with compliance and discretion in mind. By mid-morning, the first layers of papier-mâché are applied to molds. You carefully stretch the material, smoothing it to avoid air pockets or cracks. Each layer requires drying time, often under controlled conditions to ensure evenness. Pietro demonstrates subtle techniques for shaping contours, the gentle rise of a cheek, the curve of a forehead, or the indentation of an eye socket. These details, though minute, determine how a mask interacts with light, shadow, and the wearer's features, influencing its final impression. The workshop is alive with the quiet energy of creation. Other apprentices mix pigments, apply base coats, or gild decorative elements. The rhythmic sounds of brushing, smoothing, and scraping fill the space, punctuated occasionally by Pietro's instructions or anecdotes. He emphasizes that mask making during Carnival is not merely technical. It is a performance of subtlety and social understanding. A mask must convey elegance without ostentation, conceal without erasing personality, and comply with both tradition and regulation. As the day progresses, attention shifts to decoration. Volto masks, though modest, are refined with careful shading and delicate contours. Botta masks are more elaborate, featuring gilded edges, subtle filigree patterns, or a gentle curve along the chin and nose that allows for discreet conversation without revealing expression. Pietro instructs you on layering pigments to achieve depth and softness, teaching how the smallest variation in color or gloss can alter perception. You begin to understand that masks, while static objects, are dynamic in their interaction with light, movement, and human observation. Interwoven with the physical labor are stories of Carnival's social and cultural significance. Pietro recounts tales of masked balls, discreet negotiations, and minor scandals that arose from misinterpreted expressions or the mistaken identity facilitated by anonymity. Each story reinforces the idea that masks are instruments of society, capable of shaping interactions and influencing events in ways often invisible to outsiders. Even a simple mask, he explains, can have profound consequences when placed in the context of Venice's delicate social hierarchy. By late afternoon, some masks are complete and set aside for inspection. You observe Pietro carefully reviewing each one, assessing not just craftsmanship but balance, proportion, and subtlety of expression. Minor corrections are made, a brushstroke refined, a gilded edge adjusted, a curve slightly reshaped. These final touches, though seemingly insignificant, elevate the mask from a mere object to a functional piece of cultural practice, embodying tradition, compliance, and artistry simultaneously. As evening falls, the workshop slows. Tools are cleaned, pigments sealed, and masks arranged to continue drying overnight. You walk home along the misty canals, reflecting on the day's labor. Venice, with its labyrinth of waterways, narrow alleys, and centuries-old buildings, is both the canvas and the audience for the masks you create. Each mask participates in the city's social dance, a silent mediator of anonymity, tradition, and celebration. And as the lanterns cast shimmering reflections across the canal waters, a question forms in your mind: if masks can conceal identity, facilitate social interaction, and even influence events, how many subtle outcomes, both joyous and consequential, will result from the work being prepared in workshops like Pietro's during this carnival season? The answer remains uncertain, yet the anticipation of creation, tradition, and celebration fills the city and the workshop alike, promising discoveries and lessons still to unfold. The days grow busier as Carnival draws nearer, and the workshop pulses with a quiet but insistent energy. Venice itself seems to sense the approaching festival. Merchants hustle along the Rialto. Gondoliers maneuver through increasingly crowded canals, and the subtle aromas of baked bread, roasting chestnuts, and spiced wine drift through alleyways. In Pietro Bellini's workshop, the work takes on a new intensity. Masks must be ready not just for inspection, but for immediate use. Patrons expect precision, elegance, and adherence to both tradition and regulation. Your morning begins with a familiar routine: selecting molds, stretching papier-mâché layers, and mixing pigments to exacting specifications. Yet even these seemingly mundane tasks carry added pressure. Each mask will soon leave the workshop to enter a world of social scrutiny, where its craftsmanship, appearance, and conformity can influence perception in tangible ways. You handle each step with a heightened awareness, mindful of subtle details that might previously have escaped notice: a slightly uneven edge, a small bubble in the paste, or a hint of gloss applied too heavily. By mid-morning, painting begins in earnest. You are entrusted with a pair of bottom masks intended for a noble family attending a masked council meeting, a particularly delicate assignment. Pietro reminds you of the importance of restraint. A mask must convey authority without arrogance, elegance without extravagance. As you apply pigments, you notice how light interacts with the subtle curves of the cheeks and brow, revealing the nuances of depth and expression. The process requires both technical precision and aesthetic sensitivity. A single stroke can subtly alter the mask's character. While painting, you observe the rhythm of the workshop. Other apprentices work alongside you, some gilding the edges of masks with painstaking care, others smoothing surfaces or preparing materials for the next batch. The collective energy is quiet yet deliberate, each movement contributing to a seamless flow of activity. Conversation is minimal, often limited to technique or observations, but the underlying camaraderie is palpable. You sense that mastery is not just individual skill, it emerges from the interplay of observation, timing, and mutual respect. As the day progresses, attention shifts to more intricate details. Volto masks, though ostensibly simple, require subtle refinements to achieve symmetry and balance. Pietro demonstrates techniques for gentle shading along the eye sockets, nuanced highlighting along the cheekbones, and the precise application of gilded edges. These lessons teach you the delicate art of visual perception, how minor adjustments can influence not just aesthetics, but also the impression the mask leaves on others. A mask is never merely a decorative object. It is a mediator of identity, intention, and social interaction. The social dimension of masks becomes increasingly evident as you witness their inspection by clients or intermediaries. Pietro carefully presents each finished mask, explaining its features, purpose, and compliance with Venetian regulations. Patrons respond in varied ways, some quietly appreciative, others critically observant. Through these interactions, you observe the subtle negotiation between artisan, client, and societal expectation. A mask is both functional and symbolic, capable of facilitating anonymity, enforcing decorum, and sometimes even influencing social dynamics by The workshop is a symphony of movement and quiet concentration. Masks are inspected, adjusted, and set aside to dry under optimal conditions. Pietro emphasizes that the act of preparation extends beyond the workshop. Masks must maintain structural integrity, aesthetic consistency, and functionality once they leave your hands. Even minor imperfections, fissures in the paste, uneven pigment application, masks social effectiveness. Amid the technical demands, Pietro recounts historical anecdotes that illuminate the significance of masks in Venetian society. He tells of masked balls where discreet alliances were formed, of merchants negotiating under the anonymity masks provided, and of minor political intrigues where misinterpreted expressions had tangible consequences. Each story reinforces the idea that masks are instruments of culture, functioning as silent participants in social, political, and ceremonial life. You begin to see your work as part of a larger network of human behavior and tradition as evening approaches. You assist in the final finishing of several masks, a gentle sanding of rough surfaces, a light application of varnish to preserve pigment, and careful inspection for imperfections. The subtle energy of the workshop slows, yet there remains a sense of accomplishment and purpose. Each mask is a tangible reflection of skill, patience, and attentiveness. But it also carries an intangible weight, the potential to influence, conceal, and reveal in equal measure. Walking home through the city, you reflect on the lessons of the day, the repetitive, deliberate work of the workshop, though seemingly mundane, cultivates qualities essential to both craft and life: patience, observation, precision, and subtle understanding of human behavior. Each mask you create interacts with Venice in quiet but significant ways, shaping perception, facilitating social exchange, and participating in centuries-old traditions. And yet, even as the lanterns cast reflections across the water and Carnival draws ever closer, a question lingers: if a single mask can influence perception, facilitate social navigation, or subtly alter the course of events, what might be the cumulative effect of hundreds of masks circulating through the city during Carnival? How do your hands, guided by training, tradition, and attentiveness, contribute to the intricate dance of identity, anonymity, and societal rhythm that defines this extraordinary festival? The answer remains uncertain. Yet it is precisely this uncertainty that imbues your daily labor with significance, anticipation, and quiet purpose. Each stroke, each layer, and each carefully shaped contour contributes to a season of hidden meaning, subtle influence, and enduring tradition. The day of Carnival arrives gradually, announced not by fireworks or grand proclamations, but by the soft, pervasive energy that sweeps through Venice's canals and alleys. Lanterns reflect on water that has become busier with gondolas ferrying visitors, merchants, and masked participants. The city hums with anticipation, a rhythm you sense even before stepping into Pietro Bellini's workshop. Today, the masks you and your fellow apprentices have labored over 4 weeks will finally leave the confines of the studio to participate in the intricate social dance of Venice. The workshop is alive with quiet tension and meticulous preparation. Masks are organized according to clients, ensuring that each volto, botta, or moretta is properly matched to its wearer. Pietro conducts a final inspection, his eyes discerning even the smallest deviation from perfection. You assist with careful adjustments, smoothing edges, refining gilded lines, and verifying that every pigment layer is consistent and subtle. Even at this late stage, small touches carry enormous significance. The masks must not only appear flawless, but must perform their social role seamlessly, allowing wearers to navigate interactions, conceal identity, and participate fully in tradition. As the morning progresses, clients arrive to collect their masks. Pietro presents each piece with understated pride, describing its subtle features, intended function, and compliance with Venice's regulations. Patrons handle the masks with care, examining contours, checking comfort, and noting the interplay of light and shadow across each surface. The experience is a reminder that masks, though inanimate, are active participants in the city's social and cultural landscape. They facilitate behavior, shape perception, and provide the wearer with both power and discretion. You follow as several masks are delivered to noble households, observing how their presence immediately alters interactions. A botta mask worn by a young council member softens his appearance, allowing him to participate in discreet negotiations without intimidation. A delicate moretta worn by a merchant's daughter draws attention not for extravagance, but for subtle elegance, enabling her to move through gatherings unnoticed while remaining socially engaged. The effects are quiet yet profound, illustrating how even ordinary objects can mediate influence and perception. Back in the workshop, the remaining apprentices prepare additional masks for local celebrations. You notice the collaborative choreography required to maintain efficiency, careful organization of molds, shared attention to drying racks, and synchronized movements for painting and gilding. The quiet hum of activity is punctuated by Pietro's guidance, emphasizing that even in repetition, there is a discipline that shapes both skill and character. Mastery is cumulative, developed through repetition, observation, and attentiveness to both material and social nuance throughout the day. You witness the dual nature of masks. They are objects of beauty and craft, but also instruments of regulation and tradition. Venetian authorities maintain strict rules about the timing, type, and context of mask use. Certain designs are restricted to nobles or specific social classes, while others are prohibited in particular civic spaces. These regulations exist to maintain order, yet they also reinforce the cultural significance of masks as markers of identity, privilege, and social navigation. You realize that your craft is situated at the intersection of artistry, social practice, and civic oversight. By late afternoon, the festival's energy peaks. Streets and canals are filled with masked participants. Music drifts from hidden balconies, and the interplay of light, shadow, and movement animates the city in a way you have only observed from the workshop. You watch as a mask you helped create glides through a crowd, its subtle design perfectly mediating anonymity and presence. You feel a quiet satisfaction. Your labor, though unseen by many, has contributed to the unfolding of this complex social ritual. Pietro reflects on the enduring power of masks, noting that their influence is often subtle, invisible, yet persistent. They allow people to perform, conceal, negotiate, and participate in ways that would be impossible without them. Each mask carries the weight of tradition, the skill of its maker, and the potential to subtly alter human behavior. Observing the festival, you begin to understand that the workshop's daily rituals, stretching paper, mixing pigments, smoothing contours, are preparatory acts for participation in a far larger, intricate cultural mechanism. As night falls, the city takes on a dreamlike quality. Lanterns shimmer on the canals, casting reflections that mingle with shadows of masks and cloaked figures. Music, laughter, and the gentle lapping of water blend into a tranquil yet vibrant soundscape. You return to the workshop to store remaining materials, clean tools, and prepare for the next day's labor. Even in the quiet after the day's festival, the workshop resonates with the residue of social interaction, the unseen influence of your work on participants, the subtle mediation of identity, and the delicate balance between tradition and innovation. You reflect on the Carnival's lessons. Masks are more than decorative objects. They are instruments of subtle influence, facilitators of tradition, and active participants in the social fabric of Venice. The discipline, attentiveness, and patience cultivated in the workshop translate into far-reaching effects on perception, behavior, and interaction. You consider how each carefully made mask, though individually small, collectively contributes to a festival that shapes identity, reinforces cultural norms, and celebrates the city's complex social web. And as you gaze across the quiet canals, a final thought arises. In a city defined by water, reflection, and subtlety, how many moments, relationships, or decisions have been quietly shaped by the masks you helped create? How many stories unfolded under their concealment? And how many lessons remain hidden, only perceptible to those attentive enough to notice? The answer is unknowable, yet the masks endure, carrying tradition, artistry, and influence into every corner of Venetian life, season after season, year after year. The art of mask making is, at its core, the mastery of materials. Venice, with its centuries of craftsmanship, provides the perfect environment. Entering Pietro Bellini's workshop in the early morning, the familiar scents of dried paste, powdered pigments, and faintly metallic gold greet you, a sensory landscape that has become both comforting and instructive. Here, the masks begin not as shapes or expressions, but as substances, waiting for the skilled hand to transform them into instruments of perception and tradition. Your first task of the day involves parchment preparation. Venice's parchment is not merely paper. It is a product of precise selection and careful treatment. Made from the skins of sheep, goats, or calves, parchment must be cleaned, stretched, and scraped until it achieves the correct thinness and flexibility. Each sheet carries subtle variations in texture, opacity, and resilience, which influence the way paste adheres, pigment absorbs, and light reflects across a mask's surface. Pietro demonstrates the tactile evaluation, pressing a fingertip lightly against the sheet to sense density and elasticity, explaining that a misjudged sheet can result in cracks, uneven surfaces, or an undesirable final shape. Once parchment is prepared, you move on to papier-mâché, the material most intimately associated with Venetian masks. Though seemingly simpler mixture of water, flour, and layered paper, papier-mâché requires a keen understanding of proportion, drying conditions, and layering technique. Too wet, and the material sags. Too dry, and it cracks, or refuses to conform to the mold. You practice pressing the mixture over small wooden molds, smoothing edges, and ensuring that each layer bonds evenly. Pietro's guidance emphasizes patience. Each layer must dry thoroughly before the next is applied, a process that teaches attentiveness to subtle shifts in texture, timidity, and weight. Gold leaf, the final secret of Venetian opulence, demands an entirely different kind of finesse. Thin as gossamer, it can tear at the slightest misstep. Yet it transforms even the simplest mask into an object of understated luxury. Pietro shows you how to apply an adhesive layer, then gently lay the leaf over the surface using a soft brush. The process is almost meditative. Even the smallest breath of air can disturb the leaf, creating unintended wrinkles or gaps. You quickly learn that gold leaf is not merely decorative, is a testament to restraint, precision, and respect for the material's unique properties. Its application is a quiet dialogue between artisan and substance, a negotiation of patience, skill, and timing. Beyond these core materials, you explore the subtleties of pigments and gesso. Pigments are sourced from natural minerals, plants, and occasionally imported dyes, each offering variations in hue, opacity, and permanence. Gesso, a mixture of chalk and glue, prepares the mask's surface for painting, ensuring even absorption of color and a smooth, tactile finish. The combination of materials parchment, papier-mâché, gesso, pigments, and gold leaf forms a system in which every choice impacts the final product. Pietro emphasizes that mastery is not merely about assembling components, it is about understanding their interactions, limitations, and potential as you work. The process reveals itself to be more than technique. It is an education in observation and subtle adaptation. You notice how a sheet of parchment responds differently depending on the temperature or humidity, how the texture of papier-mâché shifts with each layer, and how light interacts with even the thinnest hint of gold. The tactile feedback becomes as instructive as verbal guidance. A slight resistance in paper, a shimmer in pigment, or a fragile curl in gold leaf communicates information that shapes your next action. The workshop, at first glance, appears calm, even static. Yet the reality is a careful orchestration of materials, timing, and environment. Pietro moves between apprentices, adjusting moisture levels, guiding brush strokes, and subtly modulating the light to allow for proper observation of surfaces. Each action is quiet but deliberate, creating a rhythm that reinforces both skill and attentiveness. You begin to recognize that mastery is as much about patience and sensitivity as it is about physical technique. By mid-morning, you are permitted to attempt a small volto mask independently, selecting a piece of parchment with appropriate flexibility. You layer papier-mâché carefully, smoothing it over the mold and waiting for it to begin setting. As you brush on the first layer of gesso, you are reminded of Pietro's words. Each material possesses its own will, and your role is to guide, not force. The gold leaf, still in its protective sheets, glimmers faintly under the soft workshop light, a promise of the refinement that will follow weeks of careful work. While the materials may appear mundane: paper, flour, chalk, powdered pigment, they carry latent complexity. Every choice in selection, preparation, and application affects not only the mask's structural integrity, but also its interaction with light, the wearer's features, and the social context in which it will be used. The very ordinariness of the substances underscores the extraordinary skill required to transform them into objects of both beauty and subtle influence. As the morning stretches into afternoon, the workshop's lessons deepen. You experiment with slight variations in layering technique, observing how they alter texture and resilience. Pietro encourages subtle experimentation, emphasizing that small discoveries, often imperceptible to the casual observer, accumulate into expertise over time. Each observation, how a layer of papier-mâché shrinks slightly as it dries, how gesso absorbs pigment differently depending on thickness, or how gold leaf reacts to brush pressure, becomes a lesson in patience, attentiveness, and quiet mastery. By evening, the small mask you have worked on stands ready for inspection. Pietro examines it carefully, his fingers lightly tracing contours, assessing surface smoothness, and evaluating pigment absorption. Minor corrections are suggested, a subtle adjustment to thickness here, a slight refinement of edge there. The process is neither dramatic nor hurried. It is deliberate, careful, and exacting. Through this meticulous attention to materials, you begin to understand that the true artistry of mask making lies not only in outward appearance, but in the invisible mastery of substance, process, and timing. Walking home along the misty canals, you reflect on the day's lessons. The ordinary materials: parchment, papier-mâché, gesso pigments, and gold leaf require extraordinary care, attention, and understanding. Through repeated practice and observation, you begin to see how these substances, mundane at first glance, can be transformed into tools of subtle influence, social navigation, and aesthetic expression. The city itself, with its reflective waters, narrow alleys, and centuries-old traditions, provides both context and canvas for these creations. A thought lingers: if such ordinary materials, handled with patience and precision, can be transformed into objects that mediate identity, perception, and social interaction, what other hidden potentials might exist in the everyday substances around you, waiting only for careful attention and skill to reveal them? By the following morning, your hands have grown accustomed to the textures, weights, and resistances of the workshop's materials. Parchment, once stiff and unpredictable, now yields to your touch with greater predictability. Papier-mâché layers stretch and adhere with a subtler awareness of moisture and pressure. Pigments respond more consistently to the brushes, reflecting your growing skill in mixing, shading, and layering. Yet mastery is not linear, and each mask presents new challenges. reminding you that even the most mundane materials demand constant attention today. You focus on refining the interplay between papier-mâché and gesso. Layers of papier-mâché, carefully dried over days, provide the structural foundation, but gesso transforms the surface into a receptive canvas for pigment. Applying gesso correspondence and precision. Too thick, and it will crack as it dries. Too thin, and pigment absorbs unevenly, dulling its intended effect. You learn to feel the subtle resistance of the brush, to watch the surface as it dries, and to adjust pressure and timing according to the ambient humidity and temperature in the workshop. These small adjustments, almost imperceptible to a casual observer, determine the success of the final mask. Gold leaf presents another layer of complexity. Pietro demonstrates the importance of environmental control. Even a faint draft or slight change in humidity can disrupt the delicate sheets. He instructs you in the use of a gilder's cushion, brushes made from soft squirrel hair, and subtle applications of adhesive, emphasizing that patience, steadiness, and mindfulness of the materials are as essential as dexterity. The gold leaf, once applied, interacts with light in ways that reveal nuances in the mask's contours, enhancing depth, shadow, and the subtle expression that can communicate authority, mystery, or subtlety, depending on context as you work. Pietro explains the historical origins of these materials. Papier-mâché, introduced centuries ago, was valued for its flexibility, affordability, and durability, allowing artisans to craft masks accessible to both nobility and merchants. Parchment, historically a medium for documents, finds new life in its application to mask making, valued for resilience and texture. Gold leaf, often imported, conveys wealth and prestige, but its application requires respect and skill, reminding apprentices that material itself carries meaning and influence. Each substance tells a story, and each mask becomes a vessel of both physical and cultural substance. The workshop hums with coordinated activity. Apprentices move through tasks in synchronized rhythm. One stretches and smooths papier-mâché, another mixes pigments, a third applies. Every action, though repetitive, contributes to a larger whole, and small errors ripple through the process. Pietro emphasizes that mask making is not solitary artistry alone, but a careful orchestration of materials, technique, and collaborative effort. Attention to these small details fosters a shared discipline, an unspoken understanding of timing, proportion, and material behavior that guides each step toward mastery. Mid-morning brings a subtle challenge. A volto mask exhibits an uneven texture after the gesso layer dries. The surface is slightly rough in one section, threatening to affect the absorption of pigment. Pietro instructs you on gentle sanding, demonstrating how minimal pressure and slow, circular movements can smooth the surface without damaging underlying layers. You notice the sensitivity required. Even a slight deviation in pressure can alter the surface. A lesson in restraint, focus, and tactile awareness. Pigment preparation is equally exacting. Natural minerals, carefully ground and sieved, must be mixed with the correct binder to achieve the desired consistency. Pietro instructs on subtle variations in water ratio, brushing technique, and layering order, emphasizing that even small miscalculations can affect hue, opacity, and interaction with light. Through repeated practice, you begin to develop intuition for these adjustments, learning to anticipate outcomes based on observation and tactile feedback. By afternoon, attention shifts back to gold leaf. Pietro allows you to attempt gilding a small decorative edge on a Boda mask. You apply the adhesive with precise control, carefully position the leaf, and gently press it onto the surface with a soft brush. The experience is delicate, almost ceremonial. Any hesitation or misjudgment risks tearing the fragile material. When complete, the gold shimmers, subtly accentuating contours and shadow, a quiet but transformative enhancement to the mask's character. You feel the satisfaction of having guided ordinary material into a medium that communicates elegance, restraint, and subtle social influence. As the day progresses, Pietro shares reflections on the philosophical dimensions of materials. He observes that while masks are celebrated for their beauty or symbolism, their essence lies in the careful orchestration of substance, technique, and observation. A mask is successful not merely because of its outward appearance, but because the artisan has mastered the invisible interactions between materials, light, and human perception. Every choice, from the thickness of papier-mâché to the subtle hue of pigment to the precise placement of gold leaf, mediates both function and social effect. Evening approaches, and the workshop slows to a rhythm of careful conclusion. Masks are set aside to dry, tools cleaned, and pigments sealed. You reflect on the day's lessons. Ordinary substances, paper, paste, chalk, minerals, gold, require extraordinary care, attention, and understanding. Through the repetition of daily practice, you are learning to anticipate, adapt, and refine, developing both skill and insight into the subtleties of materials. Walking home along Venice's reflective canals, you think of the latent potential embedded in these simple substances. Each layer of parchment, papier-mâché, and gold leaf, carefully applied, transforms into an instrument capable of mediating identity, facilitating social interaction, and participating in tradition. And in this realization, a quiet question arises. If mastery of such ordinary materials can yield objects of subtle power and influence, what other ordinary elements of the world might possess untapped potential, waiting for careful observation and patient skill to reveal their hidden capacities? The workshop awakens early, as it has for countless generations, with the muted sounds of brushes dipping into pigment, the faint scratching of parchment, and the soft, rhythmic pressure of papier-mâché being smoothed over molds. Today, the focus is on refining what you have learned over weeks of attentive study, mastering the subtle interactions of parchment, papier-mâché, gesso, pigments, and gold leaf to create masks that are not only structurally sound but quietly expressive. Your first task involves selecting materials for a small set of volto and botta masks, destined for a noble household preparing for an evening masquerade. Pietro instructs you to evaluate each sheet of parchment meticulously, considering flexibility, texture, and the way it will respond to layered paste. You feel a growing confidence in your touch, sensing the slight differences that will influence the final product. Every sheet chosen, every layer applied, every brushstroke contributes to a delicate balance between material, technique, and visual effect. Papier-mâché requires both patience and attentiveness. You apply successive layers over molds, allowing each to dry under controlled conditions. Pietro reminds you that the substance is alive in its own way. Too much moisture, too little, or uneven pressure can alter its behavior, producing imperfections that are difficult to correct later. You observe closely as the paste gradually conforms to the mold, each subtle shift in tension or thickness teaching lessons about material properties, patience, and the value of meticulous care. Gold leaf. The final transformative element awaits application. Pietro demonstrates again the delicate technique for handling it. Adhesive applied just enough, sheets positioned carefully, and light pressure applied with a soft brush. The shimmer of gold, almost ethereal, enhances contours, catches light, and lends quiet elegance without overpowering the mask. You notice how each mask responds differently, the gold interacting uniquely with pigments, surface texture, and subtle shadows. The process is meditative, demanding focus and restraint, teaching that mastery often resides in the smallest details. By mid-morning, the workshop is alive with coordinated activity. Apprentices work in tandem, layering, sanding, painting, and gilding, creating an almost imperceptible rhythm of collaborative labor. Pietro emphasizes that mastery is not merely individual skill, but arises from careful attention to sequence, timing, and interaction with materials. A mask's success depends on both solitary focus and shared awareness of collective processes as the day continues. You notice the way light reveals hidden qualities of materials. Papier-mâché exhibits subtle variations in translucency depending on thickness. Pigments reflect differently depending on gesso layers. Gold leaf seems to shift as you change angles or adjust light. You realize that mastery is as much about perception and observation as it is about technique. Understanding materials requires seeing their potential and limitations, responding with subtle adjustments, and anticipating outcomes before they fully manifest. Pietro shares stories of past masters, emphasizing how Venetian artisans learned to respect materials and adapt their methods accordingly. He describes masks that survived centuries due to careful layering, controlled drying, and precise pigment application, highlighting that durability is intertwined with aesthetic refinement. Every mask carries the imprint of such knowledge, a silent testimony to centuries of craftsmanship and attentiveness to material behavior. By late afternoon, your masks are ready for final inspection. Pietro examines each one, his fingers tracing contours, assessing surface smoothness, and evaluating the interaction of pigment and light. Minor refinements are suggested, subtle adjustments that elevate the work from competent to exemplary. In these moments, you perceive the true value of materials, their potential to transform simple substances into objects capable of shaping social perception, mediating identity, and participating in cultural tradition. Walking home along Venice's canals, you reflect on the day's lessons. Ordinary materials, parchment, papier-mâché, gesso pigments, and gold leaf are transformed through patience, skill, and attention to detail. Each substance carries latent potential, revealed only through careful practice and refined technique. The city itself, reflective and layered with centuries of tradition, provides both context and canvas for these creations. And as night falls, you consider a broader truth. If simple, everyday materials can be guided into forms of subtle influence, shaping identity, perception, and social interaction, then mastery lies not in grand gestures, but in quiet attention, persistent practice, and the patient cultivation of understanding. The power of materials, like the power of tradition, is often invisible yet profoundly felt. A silent force shaping lives and interactions in ways both tangible and ephemeral. You close the day with a lingering thought. The masks you create, born from humble substances, yet refined through careful mastery, are more than mere objects. They are vessels of skill, culture, and subtle social power, quietly bridging material, artisan, and society in ways that endure long after the workshop falls silent. Venice, a city of canals, shadows, and centuries-old traditions, is not merely a backdrop for mask-making. It is a living framework in which artisans navigate complex social, political, and economic systems. Among these, the Mask-Makers Guild holds a quiet but formidable power. Long before an apprentice can fully master parchment, papier-mâché, or gold leaf, they must first understand the intricate web of regulations, allegiances, and rivalries that shape every action within the craft. You arrive at Pietro Bellini's workshop early, carrying a sense of anticipation mingled with the faint anxiety that accompanies knowledge of the guild. The Mask-Makers Guild is more than a professional association. It is a regulatory body, a political force, and a network of influence. Membership confers legitimacy, access to commissions, and protection under law. Yet it also imposes obligations, adherence to standards, payment of dues, and participation in the subtle politics that govern artisan hierarchies. Pietro explains that guilds arose in response to both practical and social needs. They ensured quality, controlled competition, and established formal training through apprenticeships, while simultaneously regulating the flow of information, style, and innovation. The workshop's morning rhythm is intertwined with these realities. As you prepare molds and pigments, Pietro recounts tales of guild meetings, where disputes over technique, commissions, and clientele were argued in hushed tones behind closed doors. Rivalries were common. To master artisans might compete for a single noble patron, or a guild committee could reject an apprentice's work not for lack of skill, but for adherence to stylistic norms. You begin to appreciate that mastery of materials alone is insufficient. Navigating the guild's politics is equally essential for survival and advancement. By mid-morning, you are assigned to organize completed masks for inspection. Pietro emphasizes that presentation matters, not merely the technical quality, but adherence to guild-sanctioned standards of shape, finish, and ornamentation. Certain molds, pigment ratios, and gilding techniques are codified within the guild's practices. Deviation could lead to censure or loss of commissions. Apprentices must internalize these standards, learning to anticipate scrutiny before a master or inspector ever evaluates their work. The workshop hums with a subdued energy as apprentices apply finishing touches, each aware that the guild's watchful eye extends beyond Pietro's direct supervision. You overhear discussions about rival workshops, complaints about unfair commissions, and gossip regarding patrons who favor one master over another. These exchanges, though whispered, convey critical lessons about hierarchy, reputation, and subtle social maneuvering. In Venice, even a single mistake, a misaligned mold, an unconventional stroke of pigment can ripple outward, influencing a master's standing within the guild and the success of future apprentices. Pietro demonstrates the practical aspects of guild regulation by reviewing a letter from the Mask Makers' Council, detailing requirements for an upcoming festival commission. Guidelines specify not only design elements and quality standards, but also sourcing of materials and verification of authenticity. Gold leaf must be genuine, pigments approved, and molds registered. The bureaucratic layer of the guild might appear tedious, yet it serves both to protect patrons and enforce artisan integrity. Apprentices learn that compliance is an essential part of the craft, merging technical mastery with disciplined obedience to rules. By afternoon, you observe a more subtle aspect of guild influence, rivalry, and reputation. Another workshop down the canal has recently gained favor with a wealthy patron, causing murmurs of envy and concern. Pietro notes that these rivalries are not solely personal. They shape commissions, influence trends, and can determine an apprentice's opportunities for exposure and advancement. You realize that your progress depends not only on skill, but also on attentiveness to politics, careful observation, and the cultivation of trust and reliability within the guild network. You are given the task of cataloging masks according to guild standards, ensuring proper labeling, alignment, and compliance with codified forms. Each entry requires careful notation. The master responsible, the apprentice who contributed, materials used, and intended patron. This practice reinforces discipline, attention to detail, and awareness of the guild's administrative role, even in what might appear as a mundane clerical task. You begin to see how the guild structures both labor and recognition, providing a framework in which skill, reputation, and opportunity intersect. As evening approaches, Pietro recounts stories of past conflicts, artisans accused of copying designs, disputes over mold ownership, and subtle maneuvers to gain favor with influential patrons. These narratives illustrate that mask making is both artistic and strategic, requiring awareness of tradition, technical skill, and social intelligence. You realize that each mask leaving the workshop carries not only physical craftsmanship, but also layers of social negotiation, guild influence, and the weight of historical precedent. Walking home along Venice's quiet canals, you reflect on the duality of the craft, the physical mastery of materials, and the social mastery demanded by guild politics. Each day in the workshop is a preparation for both training hands and mind alike. Masks, you understand, are not only expressions of artistry, but also instruments situated within a complex web of regulation, rivalry, and opportunity. And as you gaze at the lanterns reflecting on the water, a question lingers. If skill alone cannot guarantee recognition or success, how will you navigate the subtle hierarchies, rivalries, and political maneuvers of the guild while preserving both artistic integrity and personal growth? The morning air in Venice carries the faint scent of salt water and stone. But within Pietro Bellini's workshop, the atmosphere is defined by concentration, routine, and the subtle weight of guild expectation. You arrive to find masks organized on tables, molds drying on racks, and apprentices moving with quiet purpose. Yet, beneath the calm rhythm lies a more intricate reality, the political and social dynamics of the Mask Makers Guild, which influence every action, conversation, and decision within the craft. Pietro begins the day by discussing recent developments within the guild. A council meeting convened to assess compliance with regulations has sparked tension among rival masters. Some have been reprimanded for failing to adhere strictly to prescribed mold shapes. Others have been praised for innovation that remains within acceptable bounds. You observe how these decisions ripple through the workshops. Commissions shift, apprentices gain or lose opportunities, and the subtle reputations of masters are constantly recalibrated. Pietro emphasizes that awareness of these dynamics is as critical as technical skill. An apprentice who understands the currents of favor and rivalry can position themselves for advancement, while one who ignores them risks stagnation or censure. Your first task of the day is the preparation of masks for an inspection by the Guild Council. These masks, intended for a prominent festival patron, must conform to exacting standards. Each layer of papier-mâché, each application of gesso, each brushstroke of pigment is scrutinized not only for craftsmanship but also for adherence to guild regulations. Pietro moves among the apprentices, providing guidance while also signaling where adjustments are necessary to satisfy expected standards. You notice how even subtle deviations, a slightly off-center contour or an uneven gilded edge, can affect the perceived quality and acceptability of a mask, influencing both the master's standing and the workshop's reputation. As the day progresses, you witness the subtle interplay of rivalry among masters. Through whispered discussions and occasional letters, news of competing workshops reaches your ears. One rival master has secured an exclusive commission for a wealthy patron, prompting strategic adjustments in your workshop to ensure that your own masks reflect exceptional skill and conformity. Pietro explains that these rivalries are not merely competitive, they are educational, teaching apprentices to anticipate challenges, adapt techniques, and understand how reputation is built and maintained. You realize that every mask leaving the workshop is both a product and a statement, representing the skill, judgment, and social positioning of its creator. Mid-morning is devoted to the cataloging and documentation of materials and masks in preparation for the council inspection. This involves meticulous record-keeping, noting the type of mold, pigments used, materials sourced, and the apprentice responsible for each component. These records, while seemingly clerical, serve multiple purposes. They provide accountability, allow for the verification of compliance, and create a historical archive of skill and production within the guild. You begin to understand that discipline in documentation is as important as craftsmanship itself. A mask may be beautiful, but without proper records and adherence to guild rules, its value and recognition can be compromised. During a brief pause, Pietro recounts stories of past apprentices who navigated the complexities of the guild with varying success. Some rose quickly through skill and strategic alliances, securing commissions and favor from influential patrons. Others, despite evident talent, faltered due to missteps in protocol, misjudged innovation, or failure to recognize subtle political shifts. You begin to perceive that mastery in mask making encompasses not just material skill, but strategic awareness, patience, and careful social observation. The guild functions as a microcosm of Venice itself, where success is contingent upon a delicate balance of competence, diplomacy, and timing. By afternoon, you are entrusted with assisting in a minor dispute resolution between two apprentices over ownership of a decorative technique. Pietro emphasizes the importance of impartiality, accurate record-keeping, and clear communication in such matters, noting that the guild's credibility depends upon fair enforcement of rules. You realize that even seemingly small disagreements carry significance, influencing reputation, relationships, and future opportunities. In Venice, where social and professional networks overlap, mastery of both craft and conduct is essential. As inspection time approaches, masks are arranged, refined, and prepared with meticulous care. Pietro instructs you in subtle final adjustments, smoothing contours, verifying pigment consistency, and ensuring that gold leaf is perfectly aligned. Each mask becomes a reflection of the workshop's skill and compliance, a tangible representation of both craftsmanship and adherence to guild standards. You observe that the success of the inspection depends not solely on the physical object, but on the orchestration of preparation, collaboration, and strategic presentation. Evening settles over the canals as the council arrives. You watch as masks are evaluated with critical eyes, assessing conformity, finish, and artistry. Masters and apprentices alike hold their breath, aware that judgments made here affect reputation, commissions, and standing within the guild hierarchy. The inspection unfolds slowly, with meticulous attention to detail, subtle exchanges, and measured conversation. You sense that success requires a combination of technical mastery, careful presentation, and an understanding of the guild's social codes. Walking home later, the lessons of the day weigh on your mind. Craftsmanship alone is insufficient. Skill must be paired with awareness, adaptability, and political acumen. Venice, in its narrow alleys, reflective canals, and centuries-old traditions, provides a stage where the interplay of artistry and social strategy unfolds in quiet but profound ways. And as you pause to observe lanterns shimmering on the water, a question arises. If mastery of materials is inseparable from mastery of social navigation, how will you, as an apprentice, learn to balance precision, creativity, and strategic awareness to secure your place within the guild and the city itself? Venice, with its winding canals, narrow alleys, and bustling piazzas, is a city where social interactions are often mediated by subtle gestures, whispered conversations, and, of course, masks. While much attention is given to the masked nobility attending grand balls and political gatherings, the lives of ordinary Venetians intersect with masks in quieter, yet equally meaningful ways. In Pietro Bellini's workshop, these interactions unfold daily, revealing how craft, social expectation, and personal expression converge in unexpected forms. The morning begins as you assist Pietro in preparing a series of simple, volto masks intended for local citizens. These customers are not nobles, merchants, or council members. They are ordinary Venetian shopkeepers, gondoliers, and seamstresses seeking masks for neighborhood celebrations, small private gatherings, or personal enjoyment. Unlike the high-stakes commissions for influential patrons, these masks are simpler in design, yet they carry a significance that is no less profound. Each mask represents identity, concealment, and participation in a citywide ritual that transcends social class. You observe Pietro carefully explaining choices to his customers. He emphasizes that even the simplest mask requires attention to proportion, comfort, and durability. A gondolier who spends hours on the water needs a mask that will remain secure and resilient, while a seamstress attending a local festivity desires elegance and expressiveness within practical limits. Pietro's explanations are both technical and instructive. He describes how to properly adjust straps, ensure ventilation, and select pigments that maintain vibrancy under varying light conditions. The customers listen attentively, demonstrating that engagement with masks extends beyond purchase. It is an education in subtlety, function, and social presence as you assist in the preparation. You notice the variety of requests. One customer desires a bright mask reflecting sunlight on the canals, while another seeks a subdued design that blends into evening shadows. Pietro adapts materials and techniques to meet these needs. Papier-mâché layers are adjusted for comfort. Pigments are mixed to achieve desired hues. Minor gilding is applied selectively to create understated elegance. Each mask, though ordinary in appearance, is tailored to the individual, reflecting both their personality and the social situations in which it will be worn by mid-morning. The workshop is a microcosm of Venice itself. Apprentices move between tasks, attending to materials, smoothing surfaces, and mixing pigments, while Pietro engages with customers in a gentle dialogue about preference, function, and tradition. You notice that the ordinary masks often require more subtle consultation than the elaborate creations for the nobility. Patrons are less familiar with the formal rules of design, more concerned with comfort and expression, and sometimes uncertain how their mask will be perceived by friends and neighbors. In these interactions, you observe a delicate balance between guidance and accommodation, teaching you that the art of mask making extends into social mediation. One customer, a middle-aged baker, requests a mask that is simple yet dignified, reflecting his position in the neighborhood without drawing undue attention. Pietro guides you to select a flexible parchment sheet, layer it carefully with papier-mâché, and apply muted pigments with precision. Gold leaf is minimized to a thin trim along the edges, ensuring durability while lending subtle distinction. The baker watches intently as each step unfolds, expressing satisfaction at both the process and the emerging mask. You sense that, for many ordinary Venetians, participation in masked tradition is as much about affirmation of identity and belonging as it is about decoration or concealment. The afternoon brings additional customers. A young gondolier seeking a mask for a festive procession, a seamstress preparing for a neighborhood masquerade, and a small group of children eager to create playful designs. Each interaction reinforces a central lesson. Masks are instruments of social negotiation, personal expression, and tradition. Their significance is not measured solely by artistry or value, but by their capacity to mediate experience, enable participation, and foster a sense of belonging within the community. During breaks in preparation, Pietro shares stories of past customers whose masks unexpectedly influenced local events. He recounts a modest merchant whose simple mask allowed him to move unnoticed during a neighborhood dispute, inadvertently mediating a misunderstanding. A seamstress whose carefully designed mask inspired subtle fashion trends among her peers. A child whose playful mask sparked a minor but memorable celebration in a piazza. These examples underscore the extraordinary impact of ordinary masks, demonstrating that even the most modest creations can carry social significance, influence behavior, and contribute to collective memory as evening approaches. The workshop quiets. Masks are cleaned, adjusted, and prepared for pickup, while apprentices reflect on the day's lessons. You realize that the ordinary masks are as significant as those for nobles, not in terms of material value or public spectacle, but because they facilitate participation, identity, and agency in everyday life. In Venice, where social navigation, tradition, and subtle influence intertwine, masks, regardless of simplicity or complexity, shape the rhythms of daily existence. Walking home along the canals, lanterns flickering in the gentle evening mist, you consider the quiet power of these masks. Ordinary customers, with their modest demands and personal concerns, rely on the craft not merely for ornamentation, but for expression, anonymity, and social engagement. And a thought lingers as you gaze across the water. If even simple masks, crafted with care, can shape interactions, mediate perception, and influence local events, what other ordinary objects around us hold extraordinary potential, waiting only for attention, skill, and understanding to reveal their hidden significance? The morning light filters softly through the workshop's windows, illuminating the array of masks laid out for inspection and adjustment. Today, the focus is on understanding not only the technical craft, but also the lives of those who will wear these creations. Pietro emphasizes that each ordinary customer carries unique needs, desires, and social roles. Masks, in this sense, are not mere objects, they are facilitators of daily life, tools of self-expression, and instruments that mediate social dynamics. Your first encounter of the day is with Signora Lucia, a seamstress who regularly attends small neighborhood masquerades. She requests a delicate volto mask, subtle in design, yet comfortable enough to wear while moving between her home, shop, and the piazza. Pietro guides you in selecting a flexible parchment base, layering papier-mâché with care, and applying muted pigments. The final product is understated, elegant, and practical. Watching her reaction, you notice a quiet satisfaction. The mask fits her identity, enabling participation in communal traditions without drawing unnecessary attention. This moment reinforces the notion that ordinary masks, though lacking grandiosity, carry immense personal and social significance. By mid-morning, a baker arrives, seeking a mask for a local festival. He is unconcerned with opulence. He desires durability, ease of wear, and a design that reflects his humble station. Pietro demonstrates subtle techniques for reinforcing the mask's structure while keeping it lightweight. You observe how small modifications, slight adjustment in strap placement, a gentle smoothing of contours transform an ordinary mask into a practical instrument, tailored to the wearer's movements and lifestyle. the baker leaves with a sense of readiness, his participation in the festival enhanced by a mask that supports both comfort and identity. Throughout the day, a series of customers arrive, each with individual requirements. A gondolier requests a mask that can endure the reflections and moisture of the canals. A group of children seeks playful, imaginative designs, and a modest merchant desires a mask suitable for both work and social events. Pietro guides you in adapting techniques, layering papier-mâché differently for durability, adjusting pigment mixtures for visibility, and applying gold leaf sparingly to enhance subtle distinction. You realize that the craft is as much about empathy, observation, and responsiveness as it is about technical skill. Between customer visits, Pietro shares stories of masks that unexpectedly influenced everyday life. He recounts how a tailor's carefully crafted mask allowed him to mediate a dispute between neighbors during a local celebration, or how a young apprentice's playful design inspired a spontaneous festival in a small piazza. These stories reveal the extraordinary social impact of seemingly ordinary masks, illustrating that their power lies not only in artistry, but also in their capacity to facilitate social interaction, identity negotiation, and subtle influence. The afternoon brings a particularly instructive example. A middle-aged merchant seeks a mask that balances visibility and anonymity, allowing him to engage in neighborhood negotiations without drawing undue attention. Pietro shows you how minor adjustments, slightly deeper curve over the nose, subtle shading along the cheeks, and a faint gilded outline can create both discretion and presence. As the merchant tests the mask, you observe his posture, gestures, and expression, noting how the object mediates behavior and confidence. Even in mundane scenarios, masks operate, shaping perception and interaction in ways that might otherwise go unnoticed. Throughout these encounters, you develop an appreciation for the diversity of ordinary Venetians' needs and the subtle strategies required to meet them. Masks serve as instruments of social navigation. They conceal identity when necessary, project desired traits, and enable participation in communal rituals. The craft extends beyond aesthetics, involving an understanding of human behavior, social norms, and the interplay between visibility and discretion. Each mask becomes a bridge between material wearer and society. As the day draws to a close, the workshop quiets, and you reflect on the cumulative lessons. Ordinary masks, though modest in appearance, are carefully engineered to influence comfort, perception, and social interaction. The simple act of wearing a mask can empower a gondolier to navigate the canals with authority, allow a seamstress to participate in neighborhood events with confidence, or help a merchant negotiate disputes with subtle discretion. In this sense, the masks you create, though intended for everyday use, carry a quiet, transformative power. Walking home along Venice's lantern-lit canals, you consider the cumulative impact of your work. Each mask, tailored to its wearer, mediates social relationships, reinforces traditions, and allows individuals to navigate the complex rhythms of Venetian life. And a question lingers as you gaze at the reflections in the water. If ordinary masks, crafted with care and attentiveness, can subtly shape daily interactions, perceptions, and experiences, How many unseen influences exist in the objects and rituals that surround ordinary life, quietly guiding human behavior in ways we rarely acknowledge. The workshop awakens once more to a quiet rhythm of brushes, molds, and powdered pigments. But today's focus is on reflection as much as production. Masks prepared for ordinary Venetians are being finalized, each inspected for durability, comfort, and subtle aesthetic appeal. Pietro emphasizes that while these masks may never appear in grand balls or political ceremonies, their significance is profound. They shape social interactions, convey identity, and allow individuals to participate fully in the city's traditions. The morning begins with a final adjustment session. A young seamstress examines her mask in the mirror, noting the gentle curve over her eyes and the soft shading that balances visibility and discretion. Pietro suggests slight refinements, a smoother edge here, a tiny adjustment of pigment, there ensuring both comfort and expression. As she dons the finished mask, you observe how it transforms her posture and demeanor. She walks taller, gestures with confidence, and interacts with others with a sense of subtle empowerment. This is the quiet magic of ordinary masks. They do not dazzle with opulence, but they facilitate presence, confidence, and participation in the social fabric. Next, a gondolier arrives to collect his mask for a local procession. The design is practical, resilient, and reflective of sunlight, crafted to endure hours on the water. Pietro guides minor adjustments, ensuring secure straps and unobstructed vision. As the gondolier tests it along the canal outside, you notice the interplay between functionality and symbolism. The mask shields and reveals, conceals and enhances, allowing him to navigate both the physical space of the canals and the social space of interaction with fellow citizens. The materials and design, once humble, are transformed into tools of personal and social efficacy. Throughout the day, ordinary Venetians, merchants, bakers, seamsters, and children arrive to collect masks or to finalize small modifications. Each mask carries a personal narrative, a child experimenting with playful colors, a baker seeking anonymity during a festival, a seamstress asserting presence in a male-dominated neighborhood celebration. Pietro encourages you to observe, noting how each interaction highlights the broader significance of craft. Ordinary materials and thoughtful design are quietly embedded in the rhythms of daily life, mediating identity, interaction, and tradition. You reflect on the stories of these customers. Signora Lucia, with her subtle volto mask, demonstrates how craft enables participation while preserving individuality. The gondolier's practical design exemplifies resilience and adaptability. The merchant's carefully balanced mask shows how ordinary objects mediate social negotiation. Each story illustrates that even unassuming masks, when designed with care, have extraordinary influence, shaping how individuals navigate the city, participate in rituals, and relate to one another. Pietro shares a quiet anecdote. A modest mask created for a seamstress unexpectedly became a model for others in her neighborhood, influencing style and social perception subtly yet persistently. Another mask, worn by a gondolier during a festival, inspired a minor but memorable local tradition where citizens playfully adorned their own masks in homage. These examples underscore a central truth. The extraordinary resides in the ordinary, waiting for skill, observation, and cultural engagement to reveal it. As evening descends over the canals, you assist in preparing masks for collection, ensuring each is carefully packaged, labeled, and accompanied by instructions for wear and care. The workshop hums with a quiet satisfaction. The work may appear mundane, but it carries tangible effects in the lives of ordinary Venetians. Each mask is not merely an object, but a facilitator of social participation, a mediator of identity, and a quiet instrument of influence within the community. Walking home beneath the lantern-lit streets, you reflect on the cumulative lessons of the day. Ordinary customers, seemingly unremarkable in social or political standing, rely on masks to engage fully in the life of the city, to express individuality, to navigate social expectations, and to participate in tradition. The materials, parchment, papier-mâché, pigments, and gold leaf, though humble, are transformed through patient craftsmanship into vehicles of personal and social significance. And as you gaze at the reflections in the water, a lingering thought emerges. If these ordinary masks, shaped by careful hands and thoughtful design, can subtly influence social dynamics, personal confidence, and neighborhood traditions, what other unassuming objects, rituals, or practices around us carry hidden power, quietly shaping human behavior, identity, and society in ways we scarcely notice? And so, our journey through the quiet workshops, bustling guilds, and reflective canals of Venice comes to a gentle close. We have traced the careful hands of mask makers, seen ordinary materials transformed into objects of subtle power, and glimpsed the lives of everyday Venetians whose stories are carried silently through each mask. These masks, though simple in appearance, reveal the extraordinary in the ordinary, the patience, skill, and quiet ingenuity that shapes history in ways we rarely notice. They remind us that even small acts, careful attention, and the slow rhythm of daily life leave traces that ripple through time. As you rest now, imagine the soft touch of parchment, the faint shimmer of gold leaf, and the calm hum of a workshop where history unfolds not in grand gestures, but in steady, thoughtful hands. Venice, its masks, and its people will continue their quiet dance long after we turn away, leaving stories for those who listen patiently. Good night, and let the gentle rhythm of history carry you into peaceful rest.